You know he's a team.
It was Celtics, Lakers.
It wasn't a real team.
Celtics like that.
Celtics and Lakers.
It is.
I can't
Right now.
There are some.
Evening, we're going to start prayer. Name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Gracious and loving God of all, we thank you for the enriching gift of Benedictine education, inspiring us today the conversion of heart, which will sacrifice for others as we seek to share your love with the world. Be our guide in animating joyful and stable communities in which every single being flourishes is your creative wonder. Draw us ever nearer to your heart within each life and each encounter of this day. Amen. My name is Jason Heron. I teach at Mount Marty, and I'm introducing my friend and sort of boss. Barb has spent 21 years as a teacher, principal, development director for the Catholic parishes and schools in our region, southeastern South Dakota. She joined Mount Marty, what year? 2012, and has been killing it ever since. She's the executive vice president for mission and advancement. A pretty important role. I mean, it's not a faculty position, but it's important. She's an oblate. She's a farmer's wife. We were driving here from Yankton, and she was like, "Oh yeah, we own all this land." And it just went on for miles and miles and miles. She was like, "That's ours. That's ours. That's ours." It was incredible. She's been married for 30 years to this farmer. His name's Joe. They have triplets, three daughters. Went to 3 separate colleges, of course, all at the same time. So that must have been interesting. The most important thing you need to know for today is that she is a master Wordle player. She'll get Wordle in like 2 tries, all the time. Played Wordle together on this trip a couple times. I'm not actually going to listen, but I'm going to try to figure out the Wordle before she does. If you hear frustrated voices in the corner, that's Joe and me trying to figure out which vowel. So Barb's going to speak to us about the importance of sustaining our Benedictine mission, which she knows quite a bit about. So here she is.
It's gonna be real hard to be serious now, Jason. So, yeah, I'm Barb Rezac. I've been at Mount Marty, as he said, since 2012. So before that, I'm going to start from the beginning because I think it's going to be kind of important to know a little bit about my life and why I act and look the way I do, just based on my history. So, I grew up on a farm in Nebraska. And I think, growing up on a farm, I heard my parents, my dad, talk a lot about stewardship. And so, I remember Stewardship Sunday. I don't know why I remember that, but I remember we used to celebrate that. And we talked about stewardship. And so it just became a part of my life to know that taking care of the land, taking care of our resources, taking care of everything is a really important thing. And it was ingrained as a young girl. I was able to attend a Catholic grade school. Went to St. Rose in Crofton, Nebraska. It was a kindergarten through 8th grade. And it was there that I learned about, back in the 80s when I went to grade school, you were involved in the liturgy. I brought my little guitar to church and I played my 3 chords and, sang along with the little church choir. And I had to play the organ, so I just got involved in liturgy. I lectured any chance I could. I'd love to stand up there and read, and I think that helped me to form this really great love for the liturgy and for the Mass and being a part of that, and it just is ingrained in me. And if I'm asked to lecture, I lecture. It doesn't even faze me because I've been doing it since I was 5. So. that's all, I think that's all super important in our Benedictine identity. Prior to serving Mount Marty University, I spent 21 years at the Catholic Parishes and School in Yankton. And I started as a second grade teacher, so my undergrad is in elementary and special ed from the University of Nebraska. Came back and I was engaged to my husband, the farmer. So I started teaching second grade, and quickly, you know, there's not a lot of people I want to teach in a Catholic school. I signed my first contract for $14,800. You know, that's 30 years ago, but that's not a lot of money. That's not why you go into that. And so, you know, there just wasn't a lot of people and energy being expended on this school. And I quickly realized that you know, how is this place going to be carried on? You know, it was this tiny little Catholic school. It was an old 1921 building, brick building, completely outdated. How do we carry this on? Not a lot of families in the school. And this is Yankton, a town of 15,000 people. I'm thinking, why isn't this important to people? And so about 2 years into that, the principal came to me, the current principal, and he said, I'm going to be leaving. And he said, we're really working hard on trying to get, you know, how do we have the next leader? You know, we're not going to pay a lot. And so how do we form this next leader? And he said, we'd really like for you to go back and get your master's degree and think about being the next principal. I was 24, you know, and I was thinking, really? Like, how am I supposed to do that? But, you know, it made me realize that we have to step up and take the responsibility for carrying these incredible institutions, these Catholic institutions on, because it's not just going to happen. And so I went back, I got my master's degree, and at 25, I was hired to be the principal at Sacred Heart School. And I did that then for 4 years. And at that time, you know, I worked really hard to try to engage the community in that school, because I thought, why, you know, like Little Crofton across the town, across the river, 800 people, had a bigger Catholic school than Yankton of 15,000 people. And I thought, this is just weird. Why doesn't Yankton care about the school? So I worked hard to engage my friends and their families in that school. And we started to gain some momentum and grew out of that little tiny old school building. And so 4 years into my principal's job, I knew we had to do something with that old building. And so I talked to the school board and our bishop and asked if we could start thinking about a new school building. And so the bishop says, well, we have the largest parish in the state here in your town. And he said, I think we're going to split the parish first. So they did that. And so then our school board said, well, why don't we build a school building first? And before we build before we put the church building up, and then we can, you know, you can maybe have mass in the gym, and then that's the way that we can continue to build this school. And he looked and he said, you know, if you're going to continue to build this school here, you guys have to build your endowment fund. And he said, there's the only way you're going to sustain this place. And so I looked at the school board, I'm like, how do we do that now? So we formed a little committee, and we decided that we needed to build endowments, and we needed to do something about that school building. And so we went out, 2 board members and I went out to the entire community, and we raised enough money to what we thought we could hire a development person, and put out this ad. I was so proud. We had the money in the bank. Put out this big ad about, you know, you got to be passionate about the school. You've got to be, you know, be able to communicate with people to explain what we're doing. And not a single person applied for my job, not one. No one would do it. I couldn't even beg people to do it. So it finally dawned on me that you can't be the principal and have all this other stuff going on at the same time. There's just no way. And so then I was like, I think God's talking to you. And so probably one of the hardest decisions I ever made, but I decided that maybe I should do the development thing and let somebody else be the principal. And so that's what we did. And so I ended up doing that for 13 and a half years. And we were able to, put up 2 new brand new buildings. So we have an elementary now and a middle school, and was able to raise the funds for that. I helped with that. we doubled the size of the school and built an endowment, built many endowment funds actually for the school and for scholarships, and we're pretty successful, established several really strong fundraisers, and I did that for 13 years, and so that was a really important lesson for me also, is just, when you're called to something like that, when you're being stirred, you need to make that jump and go do it, because if these places aren't going to be sustained if we are going to just stay in our own little thing, and I'm just going to do my own little thing. This is what, who doesn't want to be the principal? That was a big job, and I loved it, and I loved all those families, and so anyway, I did that, and then we were tearing down the old school building. I was snapping pictures, and I just thought, I feel like this chapter's closing. I just could feel it, and I thought, gosh, how? I mean, I've been here for 21 years, this has been all I've known, and sure enough, about 2 weeks later, Mount Marty called and said, would you ever consider doing development at Mount Marty? And I'm like, yeah, I've got 3 7th graders at home, I can't travel, I don't want to travel, I don't think so. I said, I think you'd be really disappointed in me, I don't think you want me to do this, and so I kind of let it go, and went on my merry way and thought, good luck, Mount Marty. It's hard to find fundraisers, and so about 2 weeks later they called again, and so I went up and I thought, well, maybe they want to talk about like alternatives, like how they can break the job down so it's more manageable, because I can't do that job. And so I was visiting with the president, and we had a president at the time. I know many of you know we've had a lot of presidents at Mount Marty. Anyway, I was visiting with the president. He was a talker. 3 hours later, I got out of there, and I don't really want to work at this place too badly, but I walked out, and here's Sister Madonna. You guys know Sister Madonna. Tall, stately, beautiful woman. She's, as soon as you see her, you put your shoulders back immediately, because she's very proud. And she said, well, Barb, what are you doing here at Mount Marty? I said, well, I was just talking to the president. We were talking about what, Mount Marty could do for the development job, and she looked at me and she said, I think you are ready for Mount Marty, and Mount Marty is ready for you. Oh boy. And I knew Sister Madonna well, because she had been a teacher at Sacred Heart School, and so I knew her very well, and I just struck me right in the heart as what am I, I just remember looking outside the windows and thinking, oh my goodness, this place needs a lot of TLC and a lot of work, and why me? Why would, I can't do this. And I got home and I said something to my husband, and he said, well, you're either going to make a career of Sacred Heart School, you've been there 21 years, and he said, or try it. What's going to be so bad about trying it? And he said, if it doesn't work, probably your other job will probably still be open. So I thought, well, I'm not getting my answer from him either. He's not telling me no. So I finally thought, well, God, let's have a conversation here. So prayed about it quite a bit, and I just thought, this is something you need to give it a shot. So I put my application in, and it took him about 2 minutes to call me and tell me that I had gotten the job. And then I had to call the priest and tell them that I was leaving Sacred Heart, and that was hard. But that's worked out okay too. And so anyway, I started at Mount Marty in 2012, and it's just been a grueling thing. But when you think about the mission, think about what we're trying to get done, you think it's just worth the effort. And I think I can put in my effort. I can't change hearts. I can't talk to donors and change hearts. All I can do is the work and then pray. And the weird thing is, stuff happens. So started at Mount Marty, had a lot of work fixing the endowment fund. We got a lot of that work done. Took me a long time to straighten that out, but got that straightened away. And the donors just really started to respond. And so we've been able, when I first got to Mount Marty, we had a $14 million endowment. And the last I looked, I think it was around 40. So we're making some progress, and have done some other work on buildings and whatever, so we're moving along. So anyway, I guess the first point I just want to make here is, we have to live these missions. We have to be the change. I have a little quote above the bathroom mirror in the girls' room from Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. I think it's good for all of us to know that if we're not going to do it, if we're not going to pick up our share of this load, this isn't going to be here. And it's so valuable. So one thing, when I started at Mount Marty and got that endowment stuff straightened out, the first thing I started thinking about was, if I'm going to talk to these donors about our mission and who we are, I better know our mission. And we're Catholic and we're Benedictine. And I thought, I grew up Catholic, was a principal of a Catholic school, and I still didn't really know that I felt like I knew my Catholic faith that well. In the 80s, we, participated in liturgy and we played our guitars, and we didn't necessarily learn the basic pieces of our Catholic faith. And so I did a lot of studying of our Catholic faith, and then ended up, Dr. Bergwald invited me to be a part of a 3-year faith formation program, and I did that, and that was really valuable. We studied salvation history, we studied the church history, we did spiritual formation. He was accountability. He would have us, he'd call me every week and he'd ask me, well, how's it going? And his 2 questions were, have you participated in the sacraments? And have you spent time in silence? And so I'm kind of a silence kind of person. When you have 3 little kids running around, you look for as much silence as you can. So I've learned to I don't ever have the radio on. I'm very seldom am I listening to music. I never watch television. It's just noise to me. So just silence is so golden. So that was an easy question for me to answer. Going to confession every week was not the easiest question, but talk about accountability and obedience to our faith. So anyway, he would check in with me. At the same time that I did that formation program for 3 years, it was once a month. We'd go to Sioux Falls. There was a group of about 15 of us. Really awesome program. And at the same time, I decided I'm going to become an oblate of St. Benedict so that I could understand that piece of who we were. And so I went back again once a month meetings, so nothing too overwhelming. But it was so valuable to learn the history of St. Benedict and the history of the sisters at Sacred Heart Monastery and the history of Mount Marty. And why that's important, just the keys to being Benedictine and what is important about that. And so it really struck me, and I made my final vow of being an oblate, which really it's not that big of a deal. It's just living this in your time and place. I'm married. I live on a farm. I can't do all the praying that the sisters do on Liturgy of the Hours, but I can do it once a day or twice a day. And I can live this with the simple life. I don't need to be extravagant in everything I do. It's changed me. It's changed how I operate. It's changed how I do a lot of things. And I think about it and I think, wow, that's a pretty valuable thing that we have here for society. So anyway, we have to live it. And so I took all these classes and got done with all of this, and I was like, oh, now what? And then COVID kind of hit, and I remember sitting at home, and we were forced to work from home for a while, and like, oh, I really like this. I'm on my farm, it's really quiet out here. I don't have a lot of stuff to mess with, and I started thinking, I'm getting old. Maybe I should think about retiring because I can like this, I could do this. My husband farms enough that I could probably be okay. And so I really started thinking about it. For about 2 months, I was trying to figure out my exit strategy, how I was going to do this. And then that George Floyd incident happened. And I remember standing in my kitchen and thinking, gosh, the world really needs our Benedictine values. And then I was thinking, yeah, but you're gonna be sitting on your patio. What are you gonna do about this, you know? You're gonna be sitting on your patio saying, well, I'm sitting on my phone, I think the world needs Benedictine values, you know? Like, what's gonna be my tool? You know, how am I gonna? And so then I was like, you're not being called to retire. What are you thinking? You know, you have the answer right under your nose of what the whole society needs, and you're being called to more, not less. And so I was like, yeah, that's kind of a weird thought. I don't want to do more. I'm getting old. But then it just kind of dawned on me, like, how do I do more? I've got to be better. I've got to know more. I've got to be sharper. And so it was there that I thought, well, I've always, in the back of my head, thought I would get a PhD or a doctoral degree. And so I thought, well, maybe that's what you need to do. And so tried to get that out of my head. And I thought, well, it's not going to go away now. I mean, it's there. So I thought, well, I'll make some calls. So I called USD, called University of Nebraska, and I knew University of Nebraska would have the better answer. I'm a Husker at heart. Anyway, so I contacted both of the advisors from those programs, and University of South Dakota has an EDD program, and UNL has a PhD. And I found out that the gal at USD said, oh, just sign up, take a class. It's been 27 years since I'd had my master's degree, pretty rusty. No idea what it means to take online classes. I mean, what's the whole Canvas system, whatever. I'm like, what's this? And so I thought, I don't even know if I know how to write anymore. So she said, get in my class. We'll get you started, get the rust off. You can see if you like it. If you like it, we'll take you in our program. No worries. She said, call UNL, see what they say, but we'll get you going right away. So I signed up for a class there, started right away, and found out I really was enjoying it. And then called UNL, and at this time I'm thinking, okay, I need a solid answer. This is a lot of work, and this isn't going to be an easy task. So what are you going to, I need an answer. And I'm a 2x4 to the head girl. It takes a 2x4 before I figure out that what's what. And I was driving home one day, and I called this advisor, and she said, do you know Sister Phyllis Hunoff? I said, well, yeah, she's one of our sisters at the monastery here. She goes, oh. She goes, well, she runs the oblate program that I'm a part of down here in Lincoln. I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, you're an oblate at the University of Nebraska? And she said, yep, I'm an oblate. She said, I said, well, so am I. And I said, well, I'm thinking about this program. She goes, you just made my day. Get your application in. I'm going to be your advisor. We're going to do this thing, whatever. So I'm like, my word, like, well, there's a 2x4 to the head, you know. Oblate as your advisor. So I put my stuff in, and again, I'm thinking, I'm not going to get in. That's the thing. I'm not going to get into the program because it's a lot to get in. And a good friend of mine had called, and I was talking with him about it, and he said, they're taking less and less students in their PhD program because of their HSC accreditation. And he said, with COVID, there's a ton of people applying because everybody's stuck at home. So he said, don't be discouraged if you don't get in the first time. I'm like, all right. That's maybe my answer, because if I don't get in the first time, that is my answer. I'm not doing it. So anyway, I ended up getting into the program, and so then I started in the fall, and this past fall, a year ago. And I've gotten into it, and I've decided now that I'm going to do my dissertation on our hallmarks. So I'm excited about that. You know, just how to, you know, I want to study how they're being lived by young alumni. So I may be contacting all your schools and as I go about that project. So anyway, the moral of the story here, the really long story is, you know, we have to live it, and I feel that sense. You know, it's on me. It is. I mean, I'm the only person I can control, so it's on me to carry this on, and I hope all of you now have that same sense of burden to carry this on. So it's just such a beautiful thing. So I'm going to run over to our hallmarks quick. I know you talked about these yesterday, but I just want to say them out loud because when you look at these hallmarks, they are like, it's just everything. It's the key. It's just the key to everything. It's the key to life. Love of Christ and neighbor. Prayer, a life marked by liturgy, lectio, and mindfulness. Stability, commitment to the daily life of this place, its heritage and tradition. Sister Thomas, by the way, has a phenomenal TED Talk on stability. If you haven't heard it, go look for it. It's really amazing. Conversatio, the way of formation and transformation. Like Mark said yesterday, it's not a world about what I can get out of this world, but how are we building community here? How are we making sacrifices for each other? Obedience, a commitment to listening and consequent action. That's a huge thing for me, as you just heard. I like following through with things that are after you listen. Following through with that. It's hard. Discipline, a way toward learning and freedom. We think of discipline as, it's going to constrict me. It's actually the way to freedom, and that's a tough lesson to teach our students. Humility, knowledge of self in relation to God and others and creation. I think about that. My husband is a huge example of that to me, in that, he, with his land, he's joking about how much land we have. We don't have that much land. Because he says you can only take care of so much. If after you've got so much land and these big corporations, how are they taking care of the land? How are they really taking care of the weeds and the fence lines and just the land itself? How are you taking care of that when you're just doing this giant pass through of spraying it with whatever? And it's a big responsibility. Stewardship, again here, responsible use of creation, culture, and the arts. Hospitality, being openness to other people, and a community, the call to serve the common good. And those are, when I look at those 10 hallmarks, and I think that is the key to the George Floyd situation. That's the key to every ailment in this society is right there. And such a valuable thing to teach our young people. I just can't even think of anything that's going to be better than what we have here at these Benedictine universities. These hallmarks, and I said it before, they've changed me a lot. I'm a driver. Let's go, and I know when I was at the principal's job at Sacred Heart, it was a lot of stuff on me. If I wanted to get something done, I'd call the Press and Dakota, the newspaper, and ask them to do an article, and I set up something here and set up something there, and it was everything that was kind of spearheaded by me. And I got to Mount Marty, and now there's a marketing department, and there's all these different departments, and I'm like, so I don't just call the newspaper? And in some ways that was nice, but in other ways, it took a lot longer to get stuff done because I had to wait for these departments, and it was a huge lesson for me in community, and knowing that they did things different. If they were going to write a story on something, it was a different story than what I would have written. And I came to realize that I needed to slow down a little bit, not be just charging forward all the time, but let this all come together. Let everybody bring their gift and talent to this situation, whatever it was, and we'd come out with a far better product and all these people that were a part of it and come along for the ride. Because so often I would find myself out putting something together and whatever, and I'm driving, and then I'm looking around and like, where is everybody? It's me, and nobody knows what I'm talking about, and it's like, it just doesn't work. Pretty soon you're doing all this work for nothing, and then I'm like, I just gave up my whole night, and nobody cares. And that's the fact, nobody cared. And so, we have to bring people with us. We have to, so that's slow cooker kind of a thing, let's put it all together, and it's gonna be slower, but it's gonna come out a lot better, a lot tastier than if we just trying to get it done so fast. So that's a big thing for this Benedictine thing that's changed me. It also, helps people flourish better that way as well. When I'm bringing all my employees, and I'm asking, I need you to do this job, and take this little piece of this and go with it. And now I need to let go of it and let them go with it and do their thing with it and bring it back to the whole project. And it's just amazing how they get excited, they're flourishing, and I'm not over the top of them, you're doing this, you gotta do it this way. And just letting them bring their gifts and talents to that whole situation. So it's been a good thing. So anyway, I'm gonna stop right now and just ask you guys to chime in here on this. So how has this rule of St. Benedict changed you? And how, here's my other question. And how can we best keep it alive? I was gonna break in groups, but I wanna hear what everybody has to say. How's it changed you?
I can comment. I think it gives us just a wonderful, very deep framework to guide ourselves and kind of make sense of how to kind of move forward in the world and do things. It's not that hard. I don't know, I shouldn't say it, but it isn't that hard and it makes a lot of good sense. But I think having that framework gives us a way to go out in the world and think about how we relate with others, how do we do what we do. And I think having that framework at least gives me confidence, more so than just, I'm doing this because I think it's a good idea. There's a whole history there and a lot of people behind us too. I think that framework is really helpful. To help, give us the confidence maybe to go out in the world.
Certainly stood the test of time.
Yeah.
That's what's so awesome about this Benedict thing. It's 1,500 years old. It's not going to go. It's not a trend that's going to go away. Yeah, I feel like it brings balance to balance that I've never had in my life before I knew and understood it. This is all me, and it isn't. Like everybody can take a share of this and run with it, and that's
So I went to an all-boys Catholic boarding school run by Benedictine monks in Nebraska, at Mount Michael.
Yeah.
And so I always feel like I was raised by Benedictines. And so when I came from another university to here, and I immediately felt at home. And I didn't even know why. I just thought, wow, this feels so familiar. It feels very much like home. And it was the Benedictine values that sort of permeated the campus that I probably imbibed as a young man but didn't even realize. It was just part of the ethos here. But the one thing that came to my mind consciously right away when I came to the University of Mary was I was so struck, and I worked at another Catholic university before this, but that didn't have an association with the religious community. I was so struck consciously by how giving, self-giving and self-sacrificial commitment to the common good that people were, that I saw in my colleagues here. And I remember telling my wife, wow, I need to up my game. These people are really, they give. And so realizing that now I was started as a professor, now I'm a dean, it's made me really aware of how important it is to always keep your eye on the Benedictine values and always making sure that you're trying to cultivate that in yourself and in your ethos of your university and in the people, always bringing that to the foreground, that we always make sure that's part of what we do and how we do things. So I think it's super important.
Anyone else want to share? All right, so, we got
John,
some good, all right.
For me, as an academic, the ladder of humility is so important, particularly today. We live in an age where the first tendency, and it's in me, is to think about, well, what about me, right? And constantly having to look at those 12 steps and say the world needs humility as much as it needs anything, and everyone claiming their own rights against each other is a war without end. Can we be humble enough to genuinely take the lowest place. And I think that the world is missing so much humility because I think in the human condition, one thing we all want to go back to is pride. And as an academic, it's a constant mirror to my face that I don't want to see, and therefore I need to see it. And it's changed my life.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? All right, so here's a big question. How do we enliven the spirituality now in our young people? That's tough, you know, like you're saying, that kids these days especially are, I feel like, it's all about me. It's like, what can I do? What can I get out of this world? And it's the message that the world sends them, and phones send them, and all of us. But Benedict, he applies to everybody. And we have to remember, you know, I think about on our campus, I don't know about your campuses, but we have most of our students are probably non-Catholic. We have around half, but probably a little less than half of our students are Catholic. And so we have every type of a student, you know, because of our athletic programs and stuff, about every type of student you can imagine on campus. And so one of the areas that I help oversee on campus is the campus ministry department. And so, you know, how do we reach out to these kids through campus ministry? And how do we help each of them in their own journey towards God, whatever that might be? You know, we don't want to be proselytizing these students. They just want them to have a great connection to God. So anyway, I always think about St. Benedict. He preceded the Catholic Church. So, you know, there wasn't a division until 500 years ago, 502 or whatever it is. And so St. Benedict was the church. St. Benedict, when he created his communities and his rule, he was creating the rule really for how the church could and should operate. And so it should involve everybody, anybody who wants to be Christian anyway. That would be his attempt to decipher the Bible and Christ's teaching. And so St. Benedict, to me, is a unifier of all of our people then. You know, everybody on our campus. St. Benedict should unify us because everybody can connect to that. And so, you know, I think it's good for us in campus ministry to be thinking that everybody can be involved in learning about the spirituality of Benedict and help that tool bring them closer to Christ. So, you know, and I know this has been a topic of some of the other sessions, but students are coming to us with very little faith formation. They don't even know what the Bible is, much less what's in it. And so we have to meet them where they are. And that's just all there's to it. So we do a survey on our campus. It's called the CIMA survey. It's the Catholic Identity and Mission Assessment. It comes through ABCU. It's actually done through Notre Dame, the actual survey itself. But it's a great survey on the spirituality of your students. And we do it for our incoming freshmen in the fall. And then we do it for our outgoing seniors in the spring. And so we can kind of see how they, you know, this is our first year doing it, so we don't have a lot of data to compare to, but I'm excited to get our next set of data in the fall and see, because it's pretty enlightening to see where these students are coming from. And the survey itself is very non-intimidating. I think, you know, it's not like threatening or making them feel bad about where they are in their faith. It's just gathering that first set of data to find out, you know, what do we need to be working on here, because it's extensive. I was shocked at the results of that survey from our freshmen coming in. And, you know, 39%, we know that more than that of our students are Catholic, but only 39% even knew they were Catholic. And of those, you think, how many even know what that means, or how many have been involved in their faith? And so it's a challenge for us on our campus. And so we are starting to build our programming now so that we can incrementally get these students to a closer relationship with God and to start knowing and understanding their place in this and their responsibility in this and how they fit into this whole piece. And so, you know, one of the things that I've learned, so I have a high school youth group that comes to my house every week on Wednesday nights. I just love them. This was my way of letting my 3 kids go at one time, and yet I still had kids at my house. So I just love it, and I just can't stop because I thoroughly enjoy them. But I have about 15, 16 kids that come every week. And the key is really good food. So I send them a message in our little group app, and every week, and I'm like, this is what it's gonna be, and I make this menu, and it always sounds probably better than it tastes, but just to, get them there. And I just want them to know, I'm spending money on them. I'm not gonna feed them hot dogs. We're gonna have, it's gonna be a homemade meal of some sort, or put some real effort into it. It's my way of showing them that I love them. And it's amazing how they all come. They love to be there. They love to come. Everybody's just astounded. How do you get my kid to come, It's the food. So we eat, we have a meal together, and I listen to them. I listen to their conversation. It is amazing what you learn from these young people when they're just sitting there eating and talking with one another. And I've on the spot switched my lesson just based on what they were saying to each other. They've dealt with a lot of things, and they're dealing with a lot of things, and I hear it. And so I know where they're at. I know what they need. And so I tailor my lessons then, and there's so many awesome YouTube videos out there that are 7-8 minutes long, which is all their attention span is, that I can play then for them based on what they're telling me while they're eating dinner. And I'll plan out I just go 1 week at a time, because I know I've got to just listen to these students this week to know what I'm going to talk about next week. And so it's been wonderful, and they have really received it well, and then they received some of these tough lessons well, because they know from the start that I love them. And that's it took me a few years to figure out why this was working, and I think that it's like they know that I care about them, and they're like I'm the first person they want to share a lot of stuff with. They come in, I got an A+ on my whatever, or I got or we won our wrestling match, or I did this, or whatever, and it's just fun. It's fun to be a part of their lives. And it started me thinking, why can't we do this on our campus? Why can't we, because I thought my kids would benefit from getting to know some other young people, and why can't Mount Marty be the one that's extending this love to these young people? So we started what we call Magnify at Mount Marty, and I guess I'm getting out of turn here, but I'll talk more about that later, I guess. So anyway, that's the thing with young people. I think we can't do anything with them until they know that we love them. And I think that's just the key to anybody's heart, probably, really. So that's kind of our philosophy in campus ministry at Mount Marty is let's love them. And we'll start with that and then see where we can go from there. I feel like I'm all out of order now. So anyway, I just wanted to talk too, and maybe I'll have Joe and Jason explain a little bit. We've done several things at Mount Marty lately to help our students. 3 years ago, we changed our core curriculum, and that's largely these two right here. It's an incredible program. I love to talk about it. I love to talk about it with our donors because it's just unique, and I think it's kind of an all-encompassing way of, number one, teaching our kids that we love them, but also just teaching them well. So take it away, boys.
Joe Rutten, Director of the Benedictine Leadership Institute at Mount Marty University, and Jason and I are colleagues in the Theology and Philosophy Department. Paul Anders is here. They've presented yesterday. Jason presents again today. And then their sister Terry Lafferty, who's a Benedictine, comes in the department too. And when I started as director, the president, we had this Benedictine Leadership Institute as, I could call it a sidecar to help build a relationship or continue a relationship between sponsoring institution and the university that was endowed by the nuns. Probably wisely seen into the future, we need to have ways to continue to infuse our Benedictine charism in the university. The president saw an opportunity for there to be a deeper integration of the Benedictine way into the university, and that could be a vehicle, that institute could be a vehicle to do so. Jason and his colleagues, God bless their hearts, voted to, in a sense, give up intro to philosophy, the ethics, and intro to Christianity to the Benedictine Leadership Institute, and to rebrand, really rebuild them into a more dynamic general education courses that engage the students where they're at currently, maybe based upon current trends and demographics. That's a bit more broad, definitely more philosophical. So the freshman, Who Am I? Is more of human anthropology, teaching them to be philosophers, teaching them to be, what does it mean to be a human being? You talk about spirituality, right? So in our curriculum now, we're teaching them in a sense about the spiritual nature of the human being of mind and heart. And that's Benedict, right? That's the rule, and that's also our Christian tradition and the intellectual tradition. But there's kind of a cadence of ever ancient, ever new. So as we read, say, The Death and Trial of Socrates with the freshmen, we're also reading David Foster Wallace, This is Water. You know, there's a vocabulary and a language that unifies us with Benedict and the rule and the Benedictine way, but then we have the ability then to connect it to the modern linguistics, the terminology, say, of consciousness or awareness, mindfulness, the mindfulness movement, right? Well, in the Benedictine tradition, this is attentiveness, right? And so, but we compartmentalize so often. So what we work to do is help prepare really the students, I would propose, for what a liberal education is, what it means to be a human person that has a mind and a heart, has a will. And then the sophomore course, BLI 201, is still kind of being fleshed out a little bit, but more as who is God, the search for God and the philosophy of religion. And so instead of just giving them, I remember I taught Intro to Christianity the first year. I thought this is the stupidest thing that we could be doing for our students. Even the ones that were what I would call discipled didn't like it. A survey of the Christian church, like they've had that if they come from a Catholic school for how many years, right? Like, oh, now they're going to get it again. Jason has a kid, I remember Jason walking by my class and he said, "You'll never believe it, I had a kid ask me who Moses was." What do you do with that? So we just thought, you know what, we're on to something here with changing our approach. The rule gives us a unified document, the language, the Benedictine way, the hallmarks, but liberal education. So those are the two freshman courses. And then the president said, I want experiential learning attached to the courses. And so we take the show on the road. We have small classes, 150 or so. And we take the freshmen to leadership experiences in the Black Hills. We've taken them to the Grand Canyon before. So as they're thinking about like this, who am I? You put them before the Grand Canyon. Right? And then they get to contextualize the content of the curriculum in the natural environment of reality. In the natural world. So, but the Grand Canyon was a little too far for us, and so we rebooted and we do the Black Hills and we do a monuments tour, and it's also for class building. Like we do it at the end of the freshman year, and then we do a sophomore class trip at the beginning of the freshman year, or the fall semester of the sophomore year. We do the trip. So spring freshman year, fall sophomore year, and then it's a retention conversation too. You're building class cohesion, community, right? What better way to do community than these types of experiential learning opportunities? And then there's even enculturation questions. We get to go to the Mount Rushmore the same day we go to Crazy Horse. Let's talk George Floyd, right? Let's talk racism. Let's talk, and so then they each get a question at each of the monuments. You go to I forget. I think at the Crazy Horse was where can I better treat people with dignity? So they're at Crazy Horse getting enculturation, they're having fun, they're doing all this stuff, but they have a reflection question. Where in my life do I not treat people with dignity? And so there is a character formation component as well that's attached to it. The sophomores go to the Rocky Mountains, and that's more about, anyway, I could go on. The junior year is an integrated space. There's no credits attached to it, but then now we're working at the department's desired pace to integrate the 4 principles of Catholic social teaching, the 4 classical virtues, the cardinal virtues, and our 4 core values of the Benedictine way of life. Those 12 principles the departments are able to take one principle from each wellspring and embed them in their curriculum as a starting point, at a minimum. But your business school could go on and say, well, we want to be a full-on Benedictine business school. All right, well, great. So it gave flexibility to the departments and the professors where they didn't feel like they were being imposed upon, or they were being asked to teach in a curriculum that wasn't their competency. And then the senior year is a capstone, one credit rule of my rule. So they all have to develop their own rule of life. So their 4-year BLI general education curriculum experience is concluded with the capstone where they do their own rule, and they have to go have it printed. They have to turn in a hard copy to ourselves, to us as faculty, then they keep one for their personal and professional futures. They keep one, they upload one onto Canvas, and we get to grade it and whatever else. But I'm telling you, they were magnificent. And it also incorporates a lot of all the modern leadership stuff that's going on in the professional world, right? It doesn't matter what your discipline is, culture is all over Main Street right now. Purpose, your why, Simon Sinek, all of this stuff. Well, you guys, Simon Sinek didn't invent why. Right? I think Jeremiah the prophet had to say something about purpose. And 29:11, God created us with one, and it's a purpose that has hope, a future of hope. So this ever ancient, ever new cadence comes back in, right? So it's connecting them to modern leadership development in their disciplines, but ultimately, I don't know, what is it, about a 15, 20-page document that most of them put together?
We even made them, they have to get it printed like this size.
Yeah, it's printed in a certain size. It's basically a folded 8.5 by 11 sheet. They're all the same. This year so far, we've made them all the same. They don't get to decorate them and make them theirs, you know. And they want to do that, and right now we're just like, no, let's just, you're part of a community. Everybody's document's going to look the same. I don't know, at some point I suppose we got to let individual expression come alive, but there's something magical in it. It's not perfect, but it has integrated the Benedictine charism and way of life into curriculum. It's made our theology and philosophy curriculum way more dynamic. All students, the dialed-in, discipled Christian and the nun that has no desire or context for religion, all of them are capable of walking in and having an encounter with the curriculum and then being taken a bit deeper than where they started. It's really been magnificent. And so, you know, now we look at Barb and we say, all right, now how does this Benedictine Leadership Institute with the curriculum then relate with the rest of the university? What's our relationship to mission, to faculty? At St. John's, they have an institute too, but it's more faculty, HR, onboarding for new employees type of a relationship. So we all have institutes that do different things. Ours is heavy on the curriculum. And then I couldn't wait to get the students out on Main Street, employed, into jobs of influence within their organization. So I took and built with another colleague professional development products for Main Street leaders. So we do executive leadership retreats, one-day internal organizational leadership programs that infuse much of the Benedictine way of life and professional development products from the ancient way of St. Benedict into the modern practices going on right now all over Main Street. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there for us. As Barb said, the world's starving for something that brings us together, doesn't divide us, and the rule really, really is magic. I have one organization right now. Every Friday, he has like 32 employees. He runs a trucking finance company. He finances trucking. Every Friday they meet and work on the rule as an organization. You know, he's tired of his employees grumbling and bitching. Right? You know how many times Benedict says in the rule, don't grumble? It's all over the place, right? So that opportunity, I think, is out there for us to take our professional disciplines and even leverage them into the market. So that's Benedictine Leadership Institute. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. He had no idea. We also have a Wisdom of Benedict class that's taught by our sisters, so every, I think it's the spring of their freshman year, the students take Wisdom of Benedict. It's a 1.5-hour class where they learn the hallmarks. It's taught by largely sisters. We've had to bring in a few oblates to teach, but it's awesome because then the students get to know the sisters and the sisters get to know the students, and that's that integration back and forth, and it's a pretty neat thing. So also, Joe, that leadership program is being used for, that Main Street one is being used for Leadership Yankton. In Yankton, we have I'm on the Yankton Thrive, which is our economic development and chamber. I'm on their executive team, and we're bringing in this program for Leadership Yankton, which typically had been kind of a tour through Yankton or whatever. And there was more of a desire in the community to know leadership skills for people. So we're using that curriculum with our economic development and chamber group to teach emerging leaders in Yankton. So it's kind of cool too. And they'll take out the religion aspect, but the leadership, the core pieces of being Benedictine, and it'll tie back to Mount Marty, which is wonderful.
That's worth addressing really quick. The beauty of Benedict is it's very flexible. The Benedictine way is lived out in a multitude of different ways based upon culture, context, all of these things. And what I have found is that if I propose to HR departments on Main Street that it's a Benedictine or monastic type of a leadership program, it gets almost no fight. If I say it's a Catholic or Christian or that type of thing, you know, a secular HR department sometimes can bat an eye at it. But I have now taken it to the city of Sioux Falls. We've had full civic leadership development for the mayor and his executives, and Yankton now has picked it up from a civic leadership development standpoint. And there's two reasons. One is because people respect the monastic. There's a kind of a cool factor that's with monks, you know, and nuns they really respect. And then the second is they're universal principles. This isn't confessional doctrines. It's dignity of the human person. Like we've got, in a sense, I've always said, we've always had DEI. It's begins with number one, dignity. And so when we look at some of that, I say we have a Benedictine language for all of it. We just have to be able to match up the lexicons so that we understand what our principles are in the ancient tradition and how they can be expressed in the modern context. Thanks, Barb.
So we also started, last year, we started what we called our Mission Scholars Program at Mount Marty. And so we decided, you know, so many of our students are scholarship to come in and be athletes or for whatever reason. And we thought, well, why aren't we scholarshiping kids to come in and really learn our mission and who we are? And that's their thing, that's their team. And so we did that last year. We brought in a group, I think we had 7 in the first cohort. And we sat down with them. They came in a little early, just like the athletic teams. We wanted them to come in early and have a little bonding time ahead of time. Took them out for Charlie's Pizza, that's a big deal in Yankton, and sat down and went through the list of kind of what the expectations would be, because you're now on this team, and we have expectations for you. And so, you know, they can't be athletes, so they're non-athletes, because we need their time. But some of the things that their requirements is participating in daily liturgy of the hours. We pray at 3:15 every day on campus. Everybody's invited to it, but they participate in that and are learning how to pray that. They're part of the oblate program, so they're being in the oblate formation so that they can learn even more about what it means to be Benedictine. They're asked to be a part of all the other things on campus for campus ministry, which would be our rosary and all the daily masses and the adoration, all the things that we do there. They serve as leaders for special days throughout the year. We have a Founders Day for our founder, Mother Jerome. Of course, the Feast of St. Benedict and Scholastica. We have Benedictine Awareness Week. And then we have on campus what we call Mission Day. And so this fall, on August 30th, we'll have Mission Day where everything shuts down. And our mission scholars will help us with this, as well a lot of students. But we start the morning with Mass. Everybody gathers in the chapel for Mass. We're going to have a joint brunch. So we'll have brunch together. And then we have a speaker coming in, a professional football player. You guys don't even know this yet. 3-time Super Bowl champion will be coming in. He's got a great message on faith and will be asked to speak to our core values. And so he'll speak for an hour in the afternoon, and then we'll break up into groups, all led by our students. We'll have probably 50 groups of 10 that will go out into the community and we'll do community service. So that will all be set up so that those leaders will know who their lead person is in the community, who they need to contact, and where they're taking their group of 10. They'll talk about what it means to do service with that group. So it's going to be a student. He may have the president in his group. He may have these guys in his group, or she. We don't know who. It's all randomly selected as they walk into the gym. And then they'll take them out to the community service, come back, and then kind of hash it back over again, what that meant to the community, what that meant to them, how they got to know one another, because every year I meet somebody new, students that I've never met or whomever. So we'll gather back and end the day in the gym. So that's kind of exciting. These mission scholars are, I ordered them shirts. I thought, well, everybody else gets their own uniform. We're gonna have our own uniforms too. So they have shirts that say mission scholars. It's pretty amazing how they're pretty proud of that, and wear those when they're asked to do all these things around campus. They're our mission leaders, and so they have a weekly meeting with Sister Rosemary, who's in our campus ministry department, and she's been teaching them. I think she's going to be doing the hallmarks with them this year. She started with the Psalms just so that they would have a good understanding of what Liturgy of the Hours is and why that's so important to Benedictine communities. And so they learned the different Psalms and why we have the Lamentation Psalms or whatever. And then I learned a lot about that this year. We are going to culminate this group with a trip to Italy to visit the places where St. Benedict. So we're going to visit Subiaco and Montecasino and all the places where St. Benedict would have walked when he was here. So as part of their mission scholar program, they will be a part of that as well. And so those are kind of some fun things we did. They also assist with those youth things that we do on campus for our high school students. So and this kind of segues into that. When we start thinking about that, I was thinking about what I did with our my youth group, but how do we reach out to these young people? They're coming to us with not a vast amount of knowledge. How can we help with that? How can we help these parishes? These parishes, you know how it is now. I don't know how it is in your diocese, but in ours, these priests are getting more and more and more parishes, and it's just getting so unwieldy and hard. And how do we educate these high schoolers who we tend to lose them? They'll joke about how do you get rid of the bats in your belfry? You confirm them, and then they'll never come back. And so it's kind of like students too. How do we keep them coming back? And so we created what we call Magnify at the Mount, and it's a high school youth night. On Wednesday nights, we did 4 of them this last year, and we invite high school kids to come up. We feed them really well, and so they know and understand when they come to campus, they're going to get a free, really good meal, and then we have, we do it different every time so they don't know what to expect when they come to campus. So one of our sessions this fall was we had 4 of our college students on a panel, 2 females and 2 males, and they talked about their faith journey from the time they were born to to where they are now, and then what their intention is for when they leave Mount Marty. And so these high school kids watch or look, these kids, it's just astounding. We had one young man, Josh Roman, who he stood up and he said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, when you get to college, he said, I'm just telling you, your faith is on you. He said, I grew up in a Catholic household and went to a Catholic high school. My parents, we just always went to Mass, that's what we did. He said, I just didn't question it, we just went. And so he said, Mom would yell and we got up and off we went. And so he said, I got to college on Sunday morning and nobody's yelling. He said, I finally looked over at my roommate and I said, go to church. And he looked back at me and he goes, dude, I'm atheist. And he said, it just hit me between the eyes. He's like, this guy's not going to get me to church. My parents aren't going to make me go to church. He said, it's on me now. I have to take this on to myself. And so he said, I learned real early on, if I wasn't going to take this on myself, it wasn't going to probably happen. And so he said, I'm just telling you right now, these are the experiences you're going to have. He said, I don't care where you go. This is the experience that you're going to that you could run into. And so he said, decide for yourself right now as a high school student that this is important, because he said, I'm telling you it is. And he's a big baseball player, he got this big beard, and so it was just a powerful night for our high school students to hear that. And so it was just one story after the other. All 4 of those kids came up with a different type of a story like that. And the high school kids were like, wow. And we got home, and the next week at my youth group, one of my kids said to me, he said, thank you for taking us there. And I said, well, what did you learn? And he said, I learned that I can live my faith in college. But yeah, you can. But you have to find it. You have to, start taking it on now. Make it important now, and continue to make it important, because and one of these young people had said, it's the only thing that's going to keep you. You can blow out your knee tomorrow. Somebody can be killed in your family. Things can happen. The only thing that you've got is your faith. That's it. And so some really, really powerful messages coming from our students to these high school students about living their faith. And we had a night in our new field house where our athletes were involved, and they ran them through stations, and the smiles and the laughter on those faces, and seeing them interact was really, really a neat thing. This spring we did a live Stations of the Cross. Our young people, Mount Martin, did a theatrical performance of it. It was just incredible. We ended the night with adoration. So as soon as Jesus is crucified and is on the stage, then we bring out the adoration, and then processed into the chapel, and then had confessions and mass and an opportunity for the students to engage there. And so just some powerful activities for our high school youth. And we have 350 students attend that, high school kids attend that night from all over. They came our east, west, south, and north from and to campus for that night. Buses coming in, and so an awesome opportunity for us to be able to share who we are. And we also just a fun little thing. We give giveaways. There's a great Mount Marty sweatshirt, a beautiful sweatshirt, nice prizes, but you can't win it unless you fill out the admission card. And then we get their data to put in the system. So, why not? So yeah, awesome opportunity there. We also do what we call Live and Large with the Lancers, another opportunity to bring young people on campus. Started this came from me being a fundraiser on the other side. I would always call Mount Marty and ask for something for our annual gala every year, our auction, and we'd always get like a sweatshirt or something, and I'm like, that's really boring. Like, why can't we have something more than that? So anyway, when I got to the other side of Mount Marty and they started calling from my old gala, I thought, let's come up with something better. So we did this Live and Large with the Lancers. It was a whole group thing that came up with this. And so we put a package on their auction at the local Catholic schools. There are 3 in our area. And it is a bus ride for a class. So if you buy this, you can pick the class that gets a bus ride up to campus. We'll go pick you up, come to campus, and spend the whole day. And so we start off with shooting hoops, and they get to tailor the package. It can be with our theater department, it can be with the monastery, it can be with our athletic teams, wherever they want to do it. So it'll be come to campus, practice or work out with maybe the basketball team. Then they have a pizza party together, and then it's a tour of campus through campus ministry, and they give a tour and show them all the chapel and all the hot spots on campus. And then they end the day with, I don't know, lots of activities. They play games with the kids or whatever. And then we give them the bus ride back home. So it's they come from like 9 to 2 in there, about 5 hours on campus. And then we send them home with an activity ticket that they can come with their family. So it's not for them and their family to come back to a game of their choice. We tried to do them on like the day of a basketball game, and then have a basketball game that night. And then that night we would serve them hot dogs up on what we call Lancer Landing in the gym. It was all you could eat hot dogs and chips and whatever, and little giveaways there too. So bringing the kids and their families on campus. So we've been doing that for 10 years, and that's how Lauren Arns, she just graduated this year. So another great opportunity to showcase our mission to families around the area and help them understand who we are. And then, so that's the end of that little section. Do you have anybody want to add to that conversation? I promise I won't call on you anymore. And then finally, go ahead.
I just had a question I was gonna ask you afterwards, but, the magnify the mount, that's such a great idea. I was curious how widely you cast your net for high school students. I'm guessing there's not many, there's probably one Catholic high school in
Yeah, well,
Yankton.
Cedar Catholic, which is in Nebraska, just south of us.
Okay, so are you sending it to all the public? How are you doing it to bring people in? Are students being bussed in from far away, or how
Yeah,
far?
honestly, we don't hardly do anything because people are that hungry for something for these high school kids. So I just started sending it out to people I knew that had youth groups like I do. And I knew of a handful of people that were doing it, just sent it to them for the first couple. And so we get 50 or 60 kids. And then Yankton always sends about 40. I always know Yankton's gonna send 40 kids. They never RSVP. And I just know they're gonna send 40 kids, so I put it in. So, and so the Yankton area just sends their 40. But we did start sending it out to, we kind of had it just this year, actually, started intentionally trying to find parishes around and sending it out. And then our students, our Mount Marty students, tell their parish, like we had a little gal from Salem, South Dakota, who, she said, I just wish we would have had this when I was in school. She said, can I invite all of my family around? And I think, well, Salem's a town of about 200 people. I thought, well, I get 10 from Salem. They brought 50 kids. So she had called all the way, the whole region around, and they took a big bus down, and they were there. So, but it just is, it's the word of mouth is kind of spread, and now we send it out to the pastors. And we have a pastor on campus now, just this past year was his first year, who's a diocesan priest. So he sends it out to he's got the email list. So he sends out our little flyer and just sends it out. But very, very little effort in marketing, very little. And that's just the kind of response we've gotten, because I think people are so hungry for something for these high school kids. And
It's a great
we tried to
idea.
make it fun.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. So that's been a good thing.
Can I ask one more question about originally you started talking about your faith formation. Can you talk, so what I'm interested in more is faculty formation. And if you have any thoughts on that, especially related to the hallmarks and that, and any thoughts you have about how we could incorporate that.
One of the things we do, and I don't know if I put it in here or not, probably I forgot about this one. I interview every candidate that comes to campus for mission. Every single person I spend a half an hour with, and talk to them. And we did this out of, I guess we have a mission integration committee on campus, and they had been doing this, but I kind of changed the model of it because it was, how do you live community? How do you whatever? So we were letting people come on campus who no idea, no intention of living this Benedictine, no intention of being a part of it. And so I changed it after a lot of the fiasco we had on campus here a couple of years ago, to being the interview isn't really an interview as much as it's explaining who we are. We are Catholic and we are Benedictine. We're not going away from that. That's who we are. And I explain the history I explain our sponsorship, I explain the sisters, I explain how they came to town and how they established the school and the hard work, and go walk out in that cemetery, and these people gave their lives to build this place. And it's up to us to carry it on. And so my one question at the end of that time, and it usually takes me a half an hour, is can you help us? Can you help us bring this mission forward? And how will you do that? And so that's been somewhat helpful, because there have been a couple that I've contacted whoever was hiring and said, this is not a fit. And so that's been helpful, but we also do what we call faith or formation days. So twice a year, we do a formation day for our faculty and staff. And we hope and somewhat expect them to attend. And what we've done for now is broken down our somewhat antiquated mission statement, which is Catholic, Benedictine, liberal arts, and community. Those are the 4 key words in our mission statement. And so we break those down and we talk about those so that we can help form them on those 4 key components of who we are. So this fall in October, our formation day will be on being Catholic. And I've had some questions from some faculty on formation on Catholic. So we'll probably do something there. Then it'll be Benedictine, as we talked about being Benedictine. And we rotate through those 4 so that every 2 years we're going through those, because as people turn over, you know, they're not really get it all. It is certainly not enough. We also encourage them to become oblates. We encourage them to attend Liturgy of the Hours. We encourage them to attend daily Mass. All those opportunities for formation we encourage. And Joe and they've got some awesome stuff that they do too at the Leadership Institute. So.
Athletics, right now, we're trying to kind of bridge that gap. I don't know, I think even in my work at the high school, it's tricky. We're adults. I don't know. But I think that we do a decent job of it. How do you present it in a way? How do you give clarity to your mission so that you onboard people to join and say and commit, yes, I want to be a part of this mission. Then also participate in formation opportunities, understanding that time's the great sacrifice, time's the thing. Like, when do we offer sessions? What do we offer? What's our expectation versus voluntary? If it's voluntary, then does anybody come? If nobody comes, then why the hell are we doing it? It really is, but I would say from my experience, particularly in athletics, I have now been commissioned to build an athletic leadership development program to help integrate mission into athletics because of the great turnover of coaches, and whether there's a culture in the athletic department driven by the coaches that is in alignment with the Benedictine mission. And the athletic director has been absolutely paramount. The athletic director wants it, therefore it happens. And whereas before, I think I wanted it, or Barb wanted it, or the president wanted it, but if the person in charge of the cohort doesn't want to have accountability or responsibility, it's not going to happen. So I would say, just from my standpoint, that the best fruit has come when the head of the department, or whatever the responsible entity is committed. If they're not committed, you're fighting a losing battle. But yeah.
I've heard this a few times, so I know other people are struggling with this. Does anybody else have ideas about this?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I love the idea of potentially having, and I'm in School of Health Science, so certainly we do the hiring for mission and so forth, but the tricky thing and the challenge sometimes is you might get one faculty applicant in 3 years, to apply for a job, and certainly you get some delightful people, but like you said, the people come from such different walks of life, and how do you continue to form them? But I love the idea of how can we utilize the sisters, and whether it's once a month at 7:30 in the morning for a half an hour of a commitment with some food and just some fellowship to talk about short bits, and then have some time together.
So
That's
those
a nice idea.
formation days that we do are in the monastery with their specialty breads that they bake. And we ask them, like with COVID, we haven't been able to do it for the last 2 years. We've kind of fumbled through it ourselves on campus, but we ask them to be most of our speakers and to talk about some of the history of the sisters that worked here. Give the history of Sister Thomas from here or whatever, just talk about some of these great people that built this place, and so that we can keep that alive. And I think that's been was pretty valuable for us. In my early years at Mount Marty, it was really valuable for me to learn and understand who really built this place. This is amazing. And why they did it. So yeah, the sisters are key, I think.
And I can address that issue of the athletics. So we just went through strategic planning in our athletic department. We have our new virtue and sport strategic plan. So we've taken our mission and values and really honed in on things that are going to resonate well with our athletes, and values that we really want to instill in them. And our coaches are now going through a formation experience so they understand those values. And we've established a Virtue in Sport class that our athletes are required to take all 4 years of their involvement in athletics. So they're really honing in on those values and then learning how to apply them. So there's an experiential learning piece where they're going out and doing some service work in the community. And so we got a nephew grant around it, and so we're starting to measure some of the outcomes, and they're really positive. Oh, University of Mary.
We can talk afterwards.
Save you a few steps, Joe.
Yeah, and I'd say that my response to it is the number one thing that I have found that I've been capable of doing is telling our story. As a baseline, it allows, for instance, we have a nurse anesthesia program that often feels disconnected from the university. It's in Sioux Falls, it's outside of town. And all I started doing is giving a 1-hour introduction, a narratio to who we are. And their sense of being a part of something greater than themselves, like, this common good, this noble, I think that's the place that I think is the starting point, is that we have to tell our story over and over and over and over. And then it allows people to know what the community is, who they are, and then they get to find their place in it and where their commitment level is. But I was amazed at the number of people at the university that didn't know our story. We're fragmented. And so how do you create a unified message where I'm really working for Barb when I'm out doing a lot of stuff? I'm really under mission almost, doing storytelling and this type of stuff. But the more times I can tell our story, I find that's the number one place to start.
Say something 7 times before anybody hears it.
Can I ask a question? And maybe I just missed it, but when you're talking about formation, are you including staff and faculty? And then have you figured out a way to get around this optional versus mandatory? We tried doing some things and it was a challenge because then, because it really does help break down silos and this kind of artificial divide and build community. But then, people who were in staff positions said, well, yeah, my supervisor will let me attend, maybe a weekly or a monthly program, but the work still needs to get done. So then I've got to work overtime, and then do we get compensated? And it got messy. I don't know if anybody found a good way to.
I think it has to come from the president to support it, and our messages all come from the president, and he says, you shut your door and attend this thing. Nobody's going to be penalized. Yep, things need to get done. I'm going to understand that if it doesn't get done, this is why it's here. So it's coming from him, and that's key, I think, for one thing. But then like he's saying, like the athletic director has to support it too, or none of the coaches are coming. And so if they don't get a strong message from the athletic director to show up, then they better. So it's just got to come from every area on top of that, and so it is an effort. It's just a huge effort, and it's not always successful. We know that there's still people that lock themselves in their office and try to get some work done, or whatever they do.
I think the success that I'd use to measure it is we have a janitor that everybody loves more than anybody in the university. She's an amazing human being. People call her by name. She attends formation sessions with us, right? Like she's a part of the community. And I don't know if it was Obama or somebody at one point one of the presidents talked about a janitor that they encountered in the White House or somewhere, and whether they participated in the mission of running the government or if they were just cleaning the bathrooms. I would hope that our janitors feel like they're a part of the mission and not just cleaning up around the campus, because they are forced in some ways to participate in the community formation events. It's not elective. Much of our stuff is forced. Mission days, if we don't show up, nobody's looking for us, but it's expected that you're there. Mission day, formation day are the two things I'm thinking of. So.
Yeah, pretty good attendance, but I'm sure there's some.
And we
do it here at Mary is we've got formation retreat, which is mandatory for everybody. And that's a one-time experience usually for all new staff. We're a little behind. It started out where started out for the faculty, so we did all of our schools first. Then we started doing the professional staff, but now this summer we're finally catching up. And everybody who hasn't been on formation retreat will be having a fabulous July 11th. And we actually remove everybody from campus. Typically for those in the past, we would go to Medora and we would have a formal retreat with different functional units together. This big one, because we're doing a catch-up from the last few years, will be on campus here. So that's one thing that's absolutely mandatory. Everybody, work stops, you are removed from access to your email, your laptop, and your scrub brushes, and you will go to a formation retreat. And then we also do with our fall and spring university chapter workshops, we do a full day that is the entire campus community, and there's always a half day within there that is dedicated specifically to sponsorship formation. So that happens for everybody at least twice a year, and then the one big 3-day retreat as well.
So quickly, we have 5 minutes left. I just wanted to talk a little bit about our Board of Trustees. So this last year, we were able to, so I run the advancement office and mission. So I have an advancement committee of the Board of Trustees. So everything I do, we take back to this board, and I'm thinking, the most important thing we're doing is mission, and the board isn't hearing about what we're doing on mission. There's no committee. And so I asked if we could have a mission committee of the board, and it took a little bit for that to go through, but they finally changed their bylaws, and we now have a mission committee of the Board of Trustees. And so we've started, the board asked me for KPIs or key performance indicators with advancement, so I said, we want to do the same with mission. So I've got a 2-page document of KPIs that we will start reporting to our Board of Trustees on how things are happening with mission on campus. And it's going to be, what is our participation in Mission Day? What's our participation, what's the percentage of our participation in formation days? And they're gonna start seeing where we are with this and what our progress is. And how, we survey them for everything, so after the event is over, they get a survey talking about how it was received, and we're gonna be tracking that, the success of those events also. So like if 42% of them said it was horrible or whatever, they can see the tracking of all of that on there, so that the board is understanding our mission and keeping that alive because of that reason. So you know how boards can be and take this university off a whole different path, and donors can do the same, and this is going to keep it focused on who we are. And so they're pretty excited about it. They're excited to see this data, and they're excited to be a part of it. I brought a couple books. We're also doing formation with them, so they participate in formation. We just did a book study on that they just finished, and now we are going to take a book that Jason had found for us and we read that was just really powerful called it is this one right here. So powerful. What We Hold in Trust. And it's about rediscovering the purpose of Catholic higher education. Excellent book. Written by Don Briel, Ken Goodpasture, and Michael Naughton. Forward by Dennis Holtschneider, who is the president of ACC, Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities. But there's a line in here, and I don't want to find it, it's in my book, that's all I've done. But it talks about how the Board of Trustees, their prime responsibility is to uphold the mission of these universities and to know and understand why they came about and why they exist today. And so really, really good stuff. So I'm excited about where we're going with that. And anyway, anything else? I had a few more things. I'm going to tell some stories of some of our donors and how they came into this mission. But so, anything else? Well, thank you for the discussion. Thank you. All your input.
In addition to Lauren, we have
Put it by Jason.
What do you mean?
You didn't go from zero work to do to now someone.
Not just.
I have to fit these in.
Yeah.